Hello YouTube, it's Roland again, back with another video from the home studio, and this one is kind of exciting. We are taking a look at the brand new Roland SP-404 MKII sampler. I want to use it to make a beat first of all and talk you guys through the process, but then we are also going to talk a little bit about some of my favorite features of this one. Let's go! Alright, so first, this is definitely a big upgrade compared to the previous generations of the SP-404. The first thing that probably strikes you is this new OLED display in the middle that allows you to see different settings or even adjust stuff like slice points on your audio samples. That's kind of huge. So in order to get things going here, I need some samples onto my pads, and that's where one of the functions with this new screen comes into play. Let's go Shift, Import from SD card, a sample in that folder, and here are my samples. So let's take a kick drum. That'll work. A snare, that one, a hi-hat, and an open one too. Okay, let's lower the volume of our open hi-hat and the closed one too. And I've been a big fan of the built-in sequencer in the SP-404 since way back, but it was limited in terms of polyphony, so that could always mess things up a little bit. That's not really the situation in this new one, so let's use the sequencer for this. So let's go pattern sequencer rec on the first one, and let's set up the sequencer to be 4 bars long and no quantization at all. Let's go for some kicks and snares. Next up, I really want to get some hi-hats going in the same pattern, and in this case I can use the 16 velocity mode on the SP-404 MKII, which gives me just 16 different steps of velocity on the same sample using the 16 pads. So let's do that. Okay, so I want to get an open hi-hat into the mix as well, but before I get ready to record that, I want to make sure that my open and closed hi-hat are in the same mute group. So Shift, Mute Group, this one and this one. Now they cut each other off. So let's record that into the sequencer again. Simple as that. And the next step here would be to just add a sample into the SP-404 and chop it up. And that's also possible now with the new MKII version. So let's go here, let's go for a sample, let's go for that folder, and this sample down here is what I want to use on that pad. So that's my sample right there. I could go in immediately and start setting my markers and slice points and stuff, but first of all I think I want to normalize the sample to make sure that the volume is decent, so let's do that. Just like that, and let's hit Shift and chop and start creating some slice points. So that's a start, but I want to go in here and adjust my slice points before I send it out to a proper new bank. So let's do that. That one, for instance. Now let's move in here and assign these to pad. Let's take these pads and let's go. Now this way of chopping and handling samples is kind of commonly used in a lot of different samplers these days, but that just hasn't been a part of the SP-404 workflow before, so I'm really glad to see it here, and it works really well for my type of workflow at least. So now I have this new group with my chopped up sample. Now I could go back to my drum sequencer here and start playing with my sample on top of it. But before I do that, I think I want to change the pitch of the sample. And from here I could go into the pitch settings and change the pitch of my sample. In this case, in vinyl mode, so I'm changing the pitch and the speed at the same time, but I could also turn vinyl mode off and go speed, lower, higher, or the opposite and just change the pitch without necessarily changing the speed. Going to extreme here doesn't really work, but you're able to change the pitch and the time individually, so that's really cool to see. In this case, I want to take my pitch down like 5 semitones and also follow along with the speed. And that's basically a way to get rid of some of the artifacts that gets introduced when you're trying to push the limits here. So -5 and 86, I guess, could be fine. Let's do that for all of them. That's a cool little bass tone. So let's try something like... That could be something, right? A pitch down sample and this drum loop. Let's see. I think I want my different slices in not gated mode, so let's turn that off. So now the sample's placed like this. Now let's just try to record our chops into this pattern right here. Yeah, I think I like that. So now I have the drums and the sample. But I think I need to do something about the sound of the sample here because it's a little bit too muddy in the mix. So let's scoop some of the lower frequencies out of the sample, right? So let's go into our effects and pick the equalizer right there. Something like that feels a bit better. Now by holding remain here, I can see whatever pads are being sent to my bus effect. In this case, I'm using bus 1 for the equalizer, and I'm also sending the drums over to the equalizer, and that's not what I want. So let's take it out. That's better. But the sample is a little bit too loud compared to the drums, so I want to lower the volume of my entire bank with the samples, and that's also possible now. By holding shift and selecting my bank, then I have the volume and I can just lower it like this. On second thought, maybe this one shouldn't be filtered through the equalizer, so let's take that one out of the bus. And that's even better. And maybe my hi-hat is just a little bit too loud, so let's take the volume down of that pad. The open one too. Now this is pretty much why I choose to use the sequencer on the SP-404 instead of just resampling myself on top of myself, because this way I'm able to adjust stuff even after the fact. Now the next step here will be to add a bass line, so let's get a bass hooked up to the SP-404. Let's plug this one straight into the input, switch it to guitar, turn up the gain, let's hit external source, and there we are. Select sampling on this pad. Start, and just record one single C note like that. That's the sample. Let's adjust it, changing our start point like so. And that's what it is. Now let's go into the envelopes and just add a little bit of release. Let's make it shorter. That's cool. Sure, I know, this is kind of a strange workflow, but I just sampled one single C note into the SP-404 MKII, and now I'm able to play notes chromatically. So that's cool. Shift, chromatic, like that. But unfortunately, at least as of right now, there's not really a good way for me to record these chromatic notes into the sequencer. So I'm gonna have to resample the individual notes, but at least everything is doable on the SP-404 MKII, so that's good. So let's do just that, but first of all, let me apply some effects and stuff on this sample. Let's use my other bus effect here. Let's go for super filter, low pass filter, before, after. That's what I want, so I'm gonna resample that into another pad. And jump back into chromatic. So now I can sample these individual notes. Resample down there. this one, and finally, so my sampled bass notes are those four. Simple as that. And let's put all of them in choke group D, for instance. Why not? That's not perfect, but I think it's good enough for this, and my only problem here is that my bass notes are a bit too long, so they kind of clash into the sample. Let's fix that. The envelope, just shorten the different sounds. So far, a chopped up sample, some drums, and a few bass notes. I think that's kind of cool. Next up, let's take this entire pattern and copy it over to another one. So I basically want to start this sequence and then just move into my samples and take everything out of the sequence itself. So I'm just left with the drums and the bass. So let's move back into the pattern sequencer and record onto this one and basically create a new pattern of the chopped up sample on top of the rest of the stuff. Now that pattern came out really choppy, but a part of me likes that, and I think that the first and the second pattern here goes nicely together, so let's just leave it. Let's take this one step further and say that I now want to resample all the stuff I did in the pattern sequencer into a single pad. That's now possible on the new one, but now when I think about it, I don't even have to resample myself. I can just use the skip back functionality that we haven't touched on yet. So the skip back basically means that the SP-404 Mark II basically resamples everything that it hears in the background, and I can recall the last 25 seconds of audio, so that's really powerful. So let's resample my sequence without the drums. So I'm going to go into bank A and just take down the volume. Let's play my first sequence here in its entirety without the drums, and then recall it from the built-in memory thing. Then we hit mark. So this is basically the last 25 seconds of audio that was played through the SP-404. So let's go over here, I guess. And let's keep it on this pad, for instance. And here we have it, my sequence without the drums in this case as a single sample. And I didn't even resample it manually. I could just load it up from the skip back functionality. That's kind of cool. Now I could process this sample even further with the built-in effects. So let's use the 404 vinyl sim, for instance. In this case, I think a delay could make more sense. Cool. And just for the fun of it, let's do the exact same thing, but with the secondary sequence without the drums. So let's take them out like so. Let's play this one. Let's recall, and let's find the start here. And there we go. And let's record on this one. Let's do the same for that one. And now all that's triggered from the pattern sequencer is the drums and the entire sequence thing that I just resampled myself doing. So now I could play the sequence and I can affect these two with the delay or another effect without necessarily affecting the drums. So that's also kind of cool. But I think I'm done here for today. I'm just gonna record some scratch on this one, cut it together in a video thing, and then let's get back to talking about some of the new really cool things about the MKII that I kind of haven't shown yet. Yeah.
Crazy how I fly through it. Fly through it. Got that straight. That's right.
Cool. Now, I don't even know where to start this, but first of all, I'm not going to try to cover everything that needs to be covered here because I'm sure someone else on YouTube does that. I don't think it's completely fair to compare this SP-404 MKII to any of the older versions of the SP-404. I've had all of them, including the first SP-404 OG, like the silver version. I've had the SX and I've had the SP-404A as well. The Mark II version here does everything that the previous models did, but better and also a lot more. Now, it doesn't come with the built-in microphone that the previous models did, but that wasn't especially good anyways, so it is what it is. A few of the things that I do want to point out and highlight is, of course, the addition of the new OLED display on the unit. That just makes the overall workflow and usability a lot easier and a lot more fun. Browsing for samples, adjusting slice points, adding effects and controlling mute groups and pad links and everything is just a lot easier here than it has ever been on an SP-404. The pads are also way better than before. First of all, we now have 16 of them instead of 12. They're all backlit with different colors. They are all velocity sensitive, kind of stiff to the touch, but still kind of small, but the overall form factor of the unit is the same as before, so I guess that's kind of obvious, right? And just the fact that we now have a proper way to pitch our samples by semitone in the SP-404 MKII makes a lot of difference for someone like me. And on top of that, we can also time stretch our samples. Even though the time stretching algorithm here isn't the best one I've ever heard, it's definitely usable. Next up, the skip back functionality that you saw me use in this little session makes a big difference for any type of workflow. The fact that the SP-404 just grabs the last 25 seconds of audio that it heard is really cool. I can't believe that I haven't really seen that on any other sampler before. So whenever you've done something on the device that felt really awesome and you're kind of sad that you didn't record it, now you can just grab that audio and just recall it and use it in the sampler itself. That's really cool. And the built-in effects on the SP-404 has always kind of been a selling point for it. I've used the SP-404 SX pretty much just as an effects unit for live shows and stuff. And here we have all the different effects that we've seen before, plus a bunch of new stuff added to it. I mean, we're getting the vinyl simulation from the SP-303 as well as the one found on the SP-404 in here. Plus this cassette simulation thing that's really cool, and a bunch of different effects that I can't even pronounce, to be honest. And I can only imagine how people will utilize these effects in the future and stack them on top of each other and resample stuff back and forth. People are crazy like that, especially in this SP-404 community, so this is going to be cool. And obviously I could go on for days, but I won't. And I realize that I come off as a complete fanboy here, but honestly, I don't care. This is a really cool update to an already amazing device, loved and used by so many people. That's what it is. Just the fact that I'm now able to resample the stuff I have going in the pattern sequencer makes a lot of difference for me. And you know, I haven't even started talking about the new librarian software for the computer that speaks to the SP-404 over USB-C, but I won't go into every single detail, I just won't. But I'll probably make more videos about this one in the future, so yeah. But we are done for today. For more beatmaking stuff, tips and tricks and gear reviews and home studio tech talk, that sort of stuff, subscribe to this channel, leave a like and maybe a comment. Something like that could be cool. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Until then...
Accurate beats.